Hello friends, how are you? Absolutely. For a 30-minute Washington Quarter video, I'd use one of these two strong openings. The Washington Quarter series began in 1932, and the US Mint notes that quarters changed from silver to copper-nickel clad beginning in 1965, so there is plenty of history and treasure hunting material to build suspense around. Intro 1. Check your quarters. Stop scrolling for just a moment, because the ordinary-looking Washington Quarter sitting in your pocket, coin jar, drawer, or old family collection could be much more interesting than you think. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're entering the fascinating world of Washington Quarters, and this is not going to be an ordinary coin video. We're going to look beyond the date. We're going to look beyond the mint mark. And we're definitely going beyond those unbelievable internet claims that make every old quarter sound like $1 million treasure. Instead, we're going to discover what serious collectors actually look for. Because here's the shocking part. Two Washington Quarters can look almost identical, carry similar dates, and yet have dramatically different collector values. One might be worth little more than face value. Another could be worth considerably more because of its age, silver composition, condition, rarity, variety, or a genuine mint error. And sometimes, the most exciting discovery isn't a perfect-looking coin. Sometimes it's the strange-looking coin that makes you stop and ask, wait, why does this quarter look different? Was it damaged after leaving the mint? Was it struck incorrectly? Is there a rare variety hiding in the design? Is the coin silver? Is the mint mark important? Or is it simply an ordinary Washington Quarter that has become valuable only because someone online placed an unrealistic price tag on it? Today, we're going to separate fact from hype. We're going to examine the history of Washington Quarters, the famous silver years, important dates, mint marks, varieties, errors, condition, cleaning and damage, and the factors that can make collectors willing to pay dramatically more for a particular coin. The Washington Quarter has an incredible history. The design was introduced in 1932 to honor George Washington's 200th birthday, and the series continued for decades. Quarters dated 1932 through 1964 were struck in 90% silver, while circulating quarters changed to copper-nickel clad, beginning in 1965, and that change created one of the most important dividing lines in Washington Quarter collecting. But here's where the story gets even more exciting. Some of the most famous rarities in the series come from the early silver era. The 1932D and 1932S Washington Quarters are considered the major key dates of the series, with remarkably low original mintages of just 436,800 and 408,000 coins respectively. Now imagine finding an old quarter and seeing the date 1932. Your heart might start beating faster. But don't celebrate yet, because the next thing you need to know is the mint mark. And then comes the condition, and then comes the question of whether the coin has been cleaned, damaged, altered, or preserved in its original state. That's where this 30-minute journey begins. So stay with me until the end, because we're going to reveal exactly what you should look for when examining a Washington Quarter, and why one tiny detail can sometimes completely change the story. Check your quarters carefully. Because the coin that looks ordinary at first glance may be the one that deserves a second look. Let's begin. Intro 2. The quarter you almost spent. Imagine this, you're standing at a store counter, you reach into your pocket, you pull out a few quarters, one of them looks old, it's scratched, it's dark, maybe the date is difficult to read, you almost throw it into the change tray, but then you notice something, you look closer, you see the portrait of George Washington, you check the date. You check the mint mark, and suddenly you realize, this might not be an ordinary quarter. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're hunting for the Washington Quarters that collectors don't want you to overlook. And I'm not talking about simply finding an old coin and declaring it worth thousands of dollars. We're going to do something much more important. We're going to learn how to tell the difference between an ordinary Washington Quarter, a collectible coin, a rare variety, and a genuinely valuable error. Because the truth about coin collecting is much more interesting than the exaggerated headlines. A quarter doesn't become valuable simply because it is old. A missing mint mark doesn't automatically mean an error. A scratch doesn't automatically mean a rare variety. And a dirty coin doesn't automatically mean you've discovered a fortune. What matters is the evidence, the date, the mint, the composition, the variety, the strike, the condition, the originality of the surfaces, and most importantly, whether collectors actually want that particular coin. The Washington Quarter itself has a remarkable story. George Washington first appeared on the quarter in 1932, and the design became one of America's longest-running coin series. From 1932 through 1964, Washington Quarters were made from 90% silver. Beginning in 1965, circulating quarters were changed to copper-nickel clad composition. That means when you're searching through old quarters, the date can immediately tell you something important about the coin's composition. But that's only the beginning. There are famous key dates, there are doubled dies, there are over mint mark varieties, there are special issues, there are condition rarities. And there are coins that look strange because they were damaged long after leaving the mint. Knowing the difference can mean the difference between finding a genuinely collectible coin and simply getting excited over an ordinary piece of pocket change. And here's something that should make every coin hunter pay attention. The famous 1932D and 1932S Washington quarters had the lowest circulation mintages of the series, making them two of the most important key dates for collectors. PCGS reports mintages of only 436,800 for the 1932D and 408,000 for the 1932S, but even those coins don't have one universal value. Heavily circulated example and an exceptionally preserved example can occupy completely different levels of the market. That's the secret we're going to explore today, so before you spend that old quarter, before you clean it, before you sell it, and before you believe an unbelievable price claim you saw online, stop, look at the coin, turn it over, check the date, check the mint mark, look at the surfaces, look for unusual details, because you may have nothing more than 25 cents. Or you may have a Washington quarter that deserves a much closer examination. Stay with me for the next 30 minutes, because we're going deep into the Washington quarter series, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what makes these coins interesting to collectors. Let's start the hunt. First coin, 1972D Eisenhower $1 coin. Rare treasure or just $1? The truth about its value. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today we are diving into the fascinating world of American coins, and this time we are looking at a very interesting coin that many people may have seen without realizing what they were holding. The coin we are talking about today is the 1972D Eisenhower $1 coin, made at the Denver Mint. And if you have one of these coins sitting in an old collection, a drawer, a box, or even somewhere among inherited coins, you may be wondering one very important question. Could this old dollar be worth more than its $1 face value? The answer is sometimes yes, but there is a very important catch. A normal circulated 1972D Eisenhower dollar is generally not a $1 million coin, and a damaged example should not automatically be considered rare simply because it is from 1972. However, certain high-grade examples, unusual varieties, and genuine mint errors can attract serious collector interest and can sell for significantly more than face value. So today we are going to examine the 1972D Eisenhower dollar, its history, design, mint mark, condition, damage, rarity, varieties, and real-world auction prices. Most importantly, we will explain what you should actually look for before deciding whether your coin deserves professional attention. The 1972D Eisenhower dollar was struck at the Denver Mint, and PCGS records a mintage of approximately 92.5 million pieces. The coin is a large dollar measuring about 38.5 millimeters across and weighing about 22.7 grams. It is a copper-nickel clad coin with a pure copper center, rather than the 90% silver composition found in certain earlier Eisenhower dollar collector issues. That means one of the first things you should understand is that the ordinary 1972D Eisenhower dollar is not automatically a silver dollar. This is extremely important because many online videos and advertisements make claims that every old Eisenhower dollar is made of silver or is worth thousands of dollars. That is not correct. Now let's look at the coin itself. On the obverse, you see the famous portrait of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th President of the United States and an important figure in American history. The reverse carries an equally historic design. It features an eagle landing on the moon, with the Earth visible in the background. The design was connected to America's achievement in space exploration and the Apollo program, and this is one reason Eisenhower dollars remain so popular with collectors today. They are not simply large coins. They represent an important period in American history, the presidency of Eisenhower, the space race, and the excitement surrounding America's lunar missions. Now look carefully at the date. You should see 1972, then look near the date and around the lower portion of the obverse. If you see a small d, that tells you the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. That tiny letter can be extremely important when identifying a coin, but remember, a mint mark alone does not make a coin rare. A 1972D dollar can be common in circulated condition, while a spectacularly preserved example can be much more desirable. And this brings us to the most important part of today's video, condition. Imagine you find a 1972D Eisenhower dollar that is dark, scratched, dirty, heavily worn, or damaged around the edges. You might immediately think, this coin is old, so it must be valuable. But age by itself does not determine value. In fact, damage can dramatically reduce collector interest. A coin that has been scratched, drilled, bent, heavily cleaned, polished, gouged, or chemically altered may be worth far less than an otherwise similar coin in original condition. This is why you should never clean an old coin just because it looks dirty. Please remember that. Do not use toothpaste. Do not use silver polish. Do not scrub it with a brush. Do not scrape dark areas. Do not try to make an old coin look shiny. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces, and cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces of a coin. Now, if your 1972 Eisenhower dollar already has damage, don't throw it away. Damage does not necessarily mean the coin has no collector interest. The date, mint mark, variety, unusual strike characteristics, provenance, and the nature of the damage can still be important. For example, there is a major difference between post-mint damage and a genuine minting error. This is one of the biggest secrets new collectors need to understand. A scratch that happened after the coin left the mint is damage. A missing design element caused during the minting process may be an error. A strange-looking rim caused by circulation damage is not automatically a mint error. A coin that was intentionally bent is not automatically rare. A coin that was polished is not automatically valuable. But if something unusual happened during production and can be authenticated as a genuine mint error, the situation can become much more interesting. Now let's talk about rarity. PCGS describes the regular 1972 Eisenhower dollar as relatively common overall, but notes that it becomes scarce in very high grades. PCGS specifically says the issue is scarce at MS66 and higher, and estimates that only around 18,400 examples may survive in MS65 or better. That is where the story becomes exciting. Your damaged 1972 dollar may not be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, but a beautifully preserved example with exceptional surfaces can be a completely different story. Auction records demonstrate this. For example, PCGS records a 1972 Eisenhower dollar graded MS66 PCGS with CAC that sold for $240 at a Stack's Bowers auction in July 2023. Another MS66 PCGS example sold for $144 in a 2023 auction, while another sold for $100, and then we reach the really impressive high-grade examples. PCGS records a 1972 Eisenhower dollar graded MS67 NGC that sold for $900 at Stack's Bowers in November 2024, but there is an even more dramatic auction record. PCGS lists an auction record of $13,200 for a 1972 Eisenhower dollar graded MS67 Plus, sold by Heritage Auctions in July 2023. Now stop for a moment and think about that. The coin has a face value of only $1. Yet an exceptional certified example reached a 5-figure auction result. This is exactly why condition matters so much in coin collecting, but we need to be very careful here. The $13,200 result does not mean your damaged 1972 dollar is worth $13,200. The auction record belongs to an exceptionally high-grade coin. A damaged circulated example is a completely different category. According to NGC's current guide, as of July 2026, circulated 1972 Eisenhower dollars are generally listed around $1.05 to $1.50, while high-grade examples can be worth dramatically more. NGC also lists very high certified grades at much higher levels, so if your coin is heavily damaged and circulated, you should keep your expectations realistic, but don't stop looking, because there is another fascinating possibility: varieties. The 1972 Eisenhower dollar family is famous for its different reverse types, especially the 1972 Philadelphia issues. The famous Type 2 reverse is associated with a distinctive globe above the eagle, and examples can command substantial premiums when properly attributed and preserved. Great Collections reports a 1972 Eisenhower Type 2 FS9, one example graded PCGS MS66 Plus, that sold for $1587038. However, dollars. Here's another important warning. Do not assume that every unusual-looking 1972 coin is the famous Type 2. The 1972 regular strike coin is a different issue from the Philadelphia Type 2 variety, discussed in many major auction records. This is why authentication and attribution matter. If you believe your coin has an unusual die variety or mint error, take clear photographs of both sides and have the coin examined by an experienced numismatist or professional grading service before making an expensive decision. Now let's return to the damaged condition. Suppose your 1972 Eisenhower dollar has scratches. If the scratches are random and clearly occurred after the coin entered circulation, they are generally considered post-mint damage. Suppose the coin has been polished and has an unnatural bright appearance. That can also hurt its collector value. Suppose the edge has been hit or flattened. Again, that may simply be circulation damage. But suppose you notice something unusual that appears to have occurred during striking. That is when you should slow down. Don't clean it, don't modify it. Don't sell it immediately to the first person who says, "I'll give you $5. Take photographs, compare the details, record the weight and diameter using appropriate equipment, and if the feature looks genuinely unusual, consider professional authentication. Collectors are looking for evidence, not just excitement, and that is one of the biggest lessons of coin collecting. a coin does not become valuable because someone on the internet says it is valuable. A coin becomes valuable because collectors recognize something desirable about it, such as rarity, condition, variety, genuine mint era, historical importance, or strong market demand. So what should you look for on your 1972D Eisenhower dollar? Start with the date. Make sure it actually says 1972, then check the mint mark. Look for the D indicating Denver. Next, examine the surfaces. Is the coin heavily worn? Are there deep scratches? Does it have evidence of cleaning? Are there gouges or dents? Is the rim damaged? Or does the coin still have attractive original surfaces and strong detail? Then inspect the strike. Look closely at Eisenhower's portrait, look at the lettering, look at the stars, look at the date. Then flip the coin over and carefully examine the eagle, the moon, and the earth. Don't use a magnifying glass simply to convince yourself that every tiny mark is an error. Use magnification to study the coin objectively. And remember something very important. A damaged coin can be interesting without being extremely valuable. That distinction is crucial. If your 1972D dollar has severe damage, the realistic value may be close to its ordinary collector or face value range rather than hundreds or thousands of dollars. But if the coin has unusually strong preservation, a recognized variety, or a genuine mint era, its value could be significantly higher. And auction history proves that high-grade 1972D dollars can attract serious competition. NGC's auction database shows hundreds of auction records for the regular 1972D Eisenhower dollar, with examples ranging from modest prices in lower grades to substantially higher prices in exceptional grades. That tells us something very important. There isn't one single value for every 1972D Eisenhower dollar. There is a range, and your coin's exact position in that range depends on its individual characteristics. So if someone tells you every 1972D dollar is worth $10,000, be careful. If someone says this coin is worthless because it's damaged, don't necessarily believe them either. The correct approach is to identify the coin first. Then evaluate its condition, then determine whether there is a recognized variety or error, then compare it with actual market results. And finally, consider professional authentication if the potential value justifies the cost. This is how serious collectors approach coins. Now imagine you are searching through an old box of coins. You find a large dollar. You see Eisenhower's portrait. You see 1972. You notice a small d. The coin is dirty and scratched. Your first thought might be, this isn't worth anything. But before you spend it, take a closer look. Is the damage ordinary circulation damage? Does the coin have unusual features? Does it have original surfaces beneath the dirt? Is the strike unusually sharp? Is there something about the design that doesn't look normal? Those questions are far more useful than simply asking, what year is it? And please remember, do not clean the coin before having it examined. A dirty coin can be cleaned later by professionals if necessary, but once you aggressively polish or scrub the surface, the original appearance may be permanently changed. Collectors often want originality. Now let's talk about the biggest misconception of all. You may see a video online claiming that a damaged 1972D Eisenhower dollar is worth millions. That kind of headline can generate clicks, but you should always separate entertainment from verified market evidence. Real auction records show that exceptional examples can sell for impressive amounts, but they also show that ordinary examples can sell for much less. The $13,200 PCGS recorded result is an exceptional high-grade example, not a typical damaged coin. So the real treasure hunt isn't about believing every giant price claim. It's about learning how to recognize the difference between an ordinary coin and an exceptional one. And that is what makes coin collecting so exciting. You don't need to own $1 million coin to enjoy the hobby. Sometimes the excitement comes from discovering a coin that has a fascinating story. Sometimes it's a rare variety. Sometimes it's a remarkable error. Sometimes it's simply an unusually well-preserved example of a coin that most people overlook. And sometimes, the greatest discovery is learning that the coin you thought was ordinary deserves a closer examination. So if you have a 1972D Eisenhower $1 coin in damaged condition, here's the bottom line. If it is heavily circulated and damaged, don't expect an enormous value simply because it is from 1972. If it is unusually well preserved, the value can rise substantially. If it has a recognized variety or genuine mint era, professional attribution may be worthwhile. And if you believe you have an exceptional example, compare it with documented auction results rather than relying on random, online asking prices. Remember, an asking price is not necessarily a selling price. An actual auction result is much stronger evidence of what a buyer was willing to pay for a specific coin at a specific time. That is why auction records from established numismatic sources are so useful. And now I want you to look through your own collection. Check those old Eisenhower dollars, check the dates, check the mint marks, look at the condition. And most importantly, don't clean them. You never know what you might have until you actually identify it correctly. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to change your life. because we are going to keep exploring old American coins, unusual varieties, mint errors, rare dates, and the real-world collector market. And remember, don't judge an old coin by its appearance alone. A scratched coin may simply be damaged. A beautiful coin may be valuable because of its grade. A strange coin may contain a genuine mint error. And a coin that looks ordinary may deserve a second look. So check your change, search your old collections, and keep learning. Because sometimes, the most interesting coin is the one sitting quietly in your collection that everyone else overlooked. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video on Change Your Life. Second and final coin 1776 1976 Eisenhower $1 no mint mark. Is this damaged bicentennial dollar rare and valuable? Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we are going deep into the fascinating world of American coins, and our focus is a coin that millions of people have seen, but very few people understand correctly. We are talking about the 1976 Eisenhower $1 bicentennial coin with no mint mark. If you have one of these large dollar coins sitting in an old collection, a drawer, a box, or perhaps among coins inherited from a family member, you may have wondered, is this old bicentennial dollar worth more than $1? And what if your coin is in damaged condition? What if it has scratches, discoloration, dark areas, dents, marks, or signs of circulation? Could it still have collector value? And most importantly, could a 1776 1976 dollar without a mint mark ever be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? The answer requires careful identification. The first thing you need to know is that not every 1776 1976 Eisenhower dollar without a mint mark is automatically rare. In fact, millions of regular 1776 1976 dollars were struck at the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark. Numismatic records list approximately 4,019,000 Type 1 Philadelphia circulation strikes and more than 113 million Type 2 Philadelphia circulation strikes. So if your coin simply says 1776 1976 and has no mint mark, don't immediately assume you have a rare fortune, but don't spend it yet either, because there are several details that can completely change the story, and that is exactly what we are going to investigate today. The 1776 1976 Eisenhower Dollar was created to celebrate America's bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of American independence. The coin carries the dual date 1776 1976, connecting the founding era of the United States with the bicentennial celebration. On the front of the coin is the portrait of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. On the reverse is a dramatic bicentennial design featuring the Liberty Bell and the moon, symbolizing both American history and America's achievements in space exploration. This combination makes the coin historically fascinating, but history alone does not determine the market value. The real question is, what makes one 1776 1976 dollar worth more than another? The answer can include condition, variety, composition, minting errors, originality, authentication, and collector demand. Let's start with the mint mark. If your 1776 1976 Eisenhower dollar has no mint mark, it was generally struck at Philadelphia for the regular circulation issue. That is completely normal. Many beginners see a missing mint mark and think the mint forgot to put it on the coin. Usually that is not what happened. For regular US coins of this era, Philadelphia issues could be produced without a mint mark. So a normal Philadelphia bicentennial dollar with no mint mark is not automatically an error. Now let's talk about the condition you specifically asked about. Damage. Imagine you pull a coin from an old box. It is dark. It has scratches. Surface looks dull. There are dents around the rim. Maybe someone polished it years ago. Perhaps there are unusual stains or discoloration. You might think, this coin is old, so the damage must make it rare. Unfortunately, damage normally works in the opposite direction. For collectors, severe post-mint damage can reduce the desirability and value of a coin. A scratch that happened after the coin left the US Mint is generally just a scratch. A dent caused by dropping the coin is generally damage. A polished surface is generally considered undesirable compared with original surfaces. A bent coin is not automatically a rare mint error, and a dark or dirty coin is not automatically valuable. This is one of the most important lessons for every new coin collector. Don't confuse damage with rarity. However, there is another side to the story. Sometimes what looks like damage may actually be a minting error or unusual striking characteristic. That is where you need to be careful. For example, professional auction records include unusual 1776 1976 Eisenhower dollars with characteristics such as a straight clip, die adjustment stripe, and obverse lamination. These are very different from ordinary scratches and damage. So if your coin looks strange, don't immediately assume it is worthless. Study it, photograph it, compare it with known examples. And if the feature appears to have originated during minting, professional authentication may be worthwhile. Now let's talk about the two major regular varieties of the 1776-1976 Philadelphia Eisenhower Dollar. Collectors generally identify these as Type 1, and Type 2, the difference is primarily visible on the reverse. The Type 1 design uses heavier, block-style lettering. The Type 2 design has thinner lettering. These varieties are important because collectors don't simply look at the date. They study the exact design variety. This is one reason two coins carrying exactly the same date can have different market values. Now let's talk about the numbers. The Philadelphia Type 1 issue had a reported mintage of about 4,019,000 pieces, while the Philadelphia Type 2 issue had a much larger mintage of approximately 113,318,000 pieces. That immediately tells us something. The Type 1 Philadelphia issue had a much smaller mintage. But again, low mintage does not automatically mean a coin is worth thousands of dollars. A coin can have a relatively low mintage and still have modest prices if enough examples survive and collector demand remains limited. This is why experienced collectors consider several factors at the same time. Now imagine your 1976 no mint mark dollar is heavily damaged. You may have deep scratches across Eisenhower's portrait. Maybe there is a large gouge near the date. Maybe the rim has been hit. Maybe someone polished the coin until it became unnaturally shiny. In that situation, you should not compare your coin with a spectacular MS-66 or MS-67 auction example. That would be like comparing a used family car with a perfectly preserved collector automobile. They are completely different markets. The grade matters. And this brings us to one of the most exciting parts of the story. High-grade examples. Recent public auction data shows that some exceptional 1976 Eisenhower Dollars can bring substantially more than face value. For example, Graysheet records a 1976 Type 1 Eisenhower Dollar, graded MS-65 MGC selling for $207 on July 20, 2026. While another MS-66 PCGS CAC example sold for $2,440 on March 27, 2026. That is a huge difference. One coin is worth around a couple $100. Another exceptional example reached thousands. And this is exactly why collectors pay so much attention to condition. The date alone didn't create that difference. The grade and quality of the individual coin played a major role. Now let's go even higher. Auction records also show that exceptional Eisenhower dollar varieties can reach remarkable prices. But we have to be extremely careful when discussing these numbers. A spectacular auction result does not mean every damaged bicentennial dollar is worth thousands of dollars. For example, an unusual 1976 Type 2 Eisenhower dollar with a documented straight-cut error sold for $74 in a heritage auction sale. That is interesting because it demonstrates the difference between a normal coin and an authenticated mint error. A regular damaged coin may not receive the same premium. A genuine mint error can be much more collectible. So if you find a strange-looking 1976 dollar, the question isn't simply, does it look weird? The better question, I proved that this unusual feature happened at the US Mint. That is the difference between a potential mint error and ordinary damage. Now let's discuss another major misunderstanding. Some people believe that every 1976 Eisenhower dollar is silver. That is not true. There were different versions of the bicentennial dollar, including regular copper-nickel clad issues and special silver issues. The silver version was produced at San Francisco and carries an excellent mark. NGC identifies the 1976 silver Eisenhower dollar as a 40% silver coin weighing approximately 24.59 grams. So if your coin has no mint mark, don't automatically call it a silver dollar. You need to identify the composition correctly. This matters because composition can affect both intrinsic value and collector demand. Now, here's something extremely interesting. There is a famous and extraordinarily rare 1976 NOS Type 2 proof Eisenhower dollar. PCGS describes that coin as a unique known example and calls it one of the rarest modern non-error coins. PCGS records a mintage of just one for that specific NOS Type 2 silver proof, but listen carefully. That is not the same thing as finding an ordinary circulated 1776 Philadelphia dollar with no mint mark. This distinction is incredibly important. A regular Philadelphia circulation strike without a mint mark is normal. The famous NOS proof is a completely different and extraordinarily rare category, so don't look at your ordinary coin and say, it has no S, so I found the ultra-rare NOS proof. You must identify whether the coin is actually a proof. its finish, its design type, its composition, and its characteristics. This is why professional attribution is so important for potentially valuable coins. Now let's go back to your damaged coin. If the coin has been in circulation for decades, it may have accumulated scratches and dents. That does not make it a mint error. In fact, those marks can tell the story of the coin's journey after it left the mint. Perhaps it was carried in someone's pocket. Perhaps it was stored in a jar. Perhaps it was passed through many hands. Perhaps it was thrown into a drawer and forgotten for decades. History can be fascinating. Collectors usually pay premiums for originality and preservation, not simply for damage. So if your coin is damaged, what should you do first? Don't clean it. Second, don't polish it. Third, don't scratch the surface trying to expose a possible error. Fourth, don't bend it. Fifth, don't apply chemicals. And sixth, don't sell it based only on a random internet price. Instead, take clear photographs of both sides. Photograph the edge, photograph the date, photograph the reverse lettering, photograph any unusual feature from several angles. If possible, weigh the coin using an accurate digital scale. Then compare your measurements and design with reliable numismatic references. The coin appears genuinely unusual. Consider sending it to a recognized grading and authentication service. Now let's talk about auction value. There is no single universal value for every 1,776,1976 known Eisenhower dollar. A heavily circulated, damaged example may be worth only a modest amount above, or sometimes around, face value. A collectible example in better condition may bring several dollars or more. A certified high-grade example can bring tens, hundreds, or even thousands depending on the specific variety and grade. And a truly exceptional coin with a recognized rarity or significant mint error can enter a completely different market. For example, NGC's auction database gives the 1,776,1976 Type 2 MS category an average price of about $140.73 across its recorded auction data. But that figure includes many different grades and auction results and should not be interpreted as the value of every coin. This is why you should never take an auction average and assume the damaged coin is automatically worth that amount. The exact grade matters, the exact variety matters, the exact error matters, and the exact buyer demand at the time of sale matters. Now let's imagine the best possible discovery. You find a $1,776,1976 with no mint mark. It has unusually clean surfaces, very little contact damage, strong details, excellent luster. The reverse lettering clearly matches a collectible variety. And perhaps there is an unusual characteristic that appears to be mint-made rather than post-mint damage. That is when the coin deserves much closer examination. But if the same coin is covered with scratches, has been polished, has rim damage, and shows heavy circulation where its value may be dramatically lower, that is the reality of coin collecting. The same date can exist in multiple value categories. This is why serious collectors don't ask anyone, what year is it? They ask, what is the date? What is the mint? What is the variety? What is the composition? What is the grade? Is the surface, the unusual feature genuine? And what have comparable coins actually sold for? Those questions lead to much better answers. Now here's another important point about online videos. You may see thumbnails claiming $1,776,1976 worth 10,000. Check your old coins, this one could make you rich. These titles are designed to attract attention, but as a collector you should always look deeper. A headline may refer to a very unusual variety, a spectacular grade, or a rare mint error. It does not mean every example is worth the same amount. Actual auction evidence is much more useful. That's why we're looking at documented auction results today rather than simply repeating enormous price claims. Now, if you have a damaged 1,776,1976 no mint mark dollar, don't be disappointed. Even if it isn't a rare jackpot coin, it is still a fascinating piece of American history. It represents the bicentennial celebration. It carries the Eisenhower portrait. It connects American independence with the nation's space-age identity. And it is one of the most recognizable large dollar coins of the modern United States. The coin itself tells a story, but if you want to know whether your individual example has significant monetary value, condition and identification are everything. So let's summarize. A 1,776,1976 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark is generally associated with Philadelphia. No mint mark by itself does not mean the coin is an error. The regular Philadelphia issues include both Type 1 and Type 2 varieties of Type 1 have a much smaller reported mintage and Type 2 damage such as scratches, dents, cleaning, polishing and circulation marks usually reduces collector desirability. A genuine mint error is different from ordinary damage. High-grade examples can be worth significantly more than circulated examples. And documented auction results prove that exceptional coins can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But those high prices should never be used to claim that every damaged $1,776,1976 is valuable. So if you have one of these coins in your hands right now, take a second look. Look at the date. Look at the missing mint mark. Look at the reverse lettering. Look at the condition. Look at the edge. And most importantly, look for evidence rather than assuming rarity. Maybe you have a normal circulated bicentennial dollar. Maybe you have a nicer collector example. Maybe you have a recognized variety. Or perhaps you have something unusual that deserves professional examination. You won't know until you identify it correctly. And remember one final rule. Never clean a potentially valuable old coin. The original surface may be more important than you realize. A coin that looks dirty can sometimes be more desirable in its original state than after someone tries to make it shiny. So before you spend your old bicentennial dollar, before you sell it online, and before you believe an unbelievable price claim, stop and investigate. Because the real excitement of coin collecting isn't simply finding an old coin, it's discovering why that particular coin is different. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to change your life and turn on notifications. We will continue exploring rare American coins, unusual mint errors, valuable varieties, old dollars, quarters, nickels, dimes and pennies. And most importantly, we will keep separating genuine collector value from exaggerated entertainment. So check your old coin jars, check your family collections, check those forgotten boxes. And if you find a $1,776,1976 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark, don't immediately spend it. Take a closer look. You may have a normal bicentennial dollar, you may have a collectible variety, or you may have something unusual that deserves a second opinion. Thanks for watching Change Your Life. Keep searching, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next coin video.